The Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Real Doctor Who fans with real Doctor Who opinions.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. I am your host, Brett, and in this episode, I am going to be discussing and reviewing and giving my thoughts on the brand new colorization and also the abridgination of the 10 episodes. Often in some articles, I saw it as being 12 episodes long. No, not that one. And please never abridge the Daleks master plan, please. I don't even think that'd be whatever. And I'm going to be comparing and contrasting that with the colorization of the Daleks, which came out a year ago of date of recording. So, for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, and discussing that because there is outrage, my friends. Yes, fellow listeners, people are not happy with what has gone on with the colorization and also the abridgination and also the maybe changination of possible canon and continuity for this. And I think it brings a couple of interesting questions. One is the canon and continuity different? And two, is it okay for it to exist? And I'm going to just start off because I'm actually worried that I'm going to forget everything. And I feel as though that having both, original OG war games in its 10 episode, very repetitive glory existing, as well as the colorization and also changing of canon and continuity is also a good thing in both ways. In one way, and I will tell you, and this is going to go into a podcast that I do in the near future, is I find it really interesting that there's so many people that get offended by, the hashtag not my doctor, whatnot. If you get offended by that, sorry, I'm not one of those people that does the hashtag. But again, it is them announcing to the world, which nobody needs to. But it is them announcing to the world that, Jodie Whittaker, Ncuti Gatwa, Peter Capaldi, whatever, is not their doctor. And it is okay, to stoke the powers of contention and to disagree with people is what fans do. Now, if you take it personally, that is basically on you. If they take it personally, that is on them. You make it a one-sided argument regardless. And the interesting thing regarding this whole thing is I don't mind both. I disagree with a couple of things that occurred in the war games, but I want to also kind of give a level-headed review and discussion points regarding this. The original one, I feel as though if you want to have the 1963 all the way to 1989 as your canon and the standalone canon and continuity, then the black and white version is for you, my friends. If you actually would like to incorporate the new series as well as maybe what RTD might be doing in season 2 of RTD Part 2, and also maybe have your door open to what Chris Chibnall did with The Timeless Child, then, my friends, I feel as though the colorization of the war games is something that I think you should be open to. And I don't think either mindset is wrong. I feel as though, because what was it? I was on Facebook the other day and I saw an interesting Facebook group. I'm into comic books. DC is my jam for the most part. But I noticed this one group that was recommended to me, which was a Marvel group, which started off with, whenever, like 1960s, all the way to 1998 or so. And I thought that was an interesting cutoff. And in order to agree to be a part of this group, you had to basically say that anything past 1998, maybe 1999 or whatever, is not canon, is not going to be discussed here, because there was an event that I apparently really divided fans, and so much so that, and it wasn't like, a massive outrage where, people are still arguing on forums. I believe the people that, cap their Marvel comic continuity off at 1998, I believe, they see this as the only canon and continuity. Everything else has kind of slowly, divulged or diverged into something lesser than what they would expect to Marvel Comics characters and, situations to be. And then you have, and that's fine that group exists. If somebody were to go in from that group and start arguing in the mainline Marvel, 616 universe, I think that would be an issue because there's a group for them. There is a space, there's a group, you can be a part of it. I think where Doctor Who fans get, struggle with is you have the class. There's so many eras that you can just stop and just say, this is where it ends for me. And you can, take, 1963 all the way to the TV movie, or you purge the TV movie, doesn't exist to you, or you do that and you take it all the way up to, I don't know, maybe the Big Bang for the fifth series of Doctor Who with Matt Smith. Maybe when the TARDIS exploded, that is when canon and continuity ended for you. And then you could say some people, if you look at the viewing figures for the new series of Doctor Who, you can also say that, Peter Capaldi did not have a good, viewing figures. His overnight figures were bad. And you know what? The funny thing about that whole thing is, and just a side tangent, you could say, well, but people continue to watch it. People do binge it, similarly to what they're saying currently with the Ncuti Gatwa and also kind of to some extent the Jodie Whittaker era. Nobody was on that bandwagon with Peter Capaldi, and they also, you could say, they had it aired at different points in time, changed the day of the week, and so, of course, it's going to suffer, viewing figures wise. And I think that you'd be justified in saying that if you were to tabulate the numbers differently, wait a month or so, like, they're doing with RTD Part 2, you could say that maybe perhaps that the show wasn't as struggling as it once was. Hence the BBC kept on renewing it for a while. However, you could also say that the viewing figures dropped with Capaldi because it went from, young Christopher Eccleston. It went from young, kind of somewhat possibly heartthrob David Tennant, and then for some reason, not my jam, but heartthrob of Matt Smith. And then you have the older Peter Capaldi, where people maybe just like, well, I want Hot Doctor. My doctor, hashtag Hot Doctor. Oh man, I hope, let's make that a hashtag right there. Anyway, so you have all those. And then, of course, you have what I called on this podcast regarding the Jodie Whittaker Doctor, the 13th Doctor, is you're going to have people that are either A, out because gender change, or B, out because it is not a good series, but they're going to be seen as one and the same. And generally, it is going to be because of the gender change, not because of the writing not being good. That was the cross that Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall had to bear. Chris Chibnall was basically the one that was, building the cross for Jodie Whittaker to bear. But again, that is my opinion right there. So again, I feel as though there's so many avenues that you could go down to in accepting the War Games, the colorized version, and the original, the OG version of the War Games as being canon and continuity. I think we as fans need to be a little bit more tolerant into hearing other people's thoughts. But again, with fandom comes the word fanatic. And when you have fanatics talking, you're probably not going to make much headway whatsoever. And for me personally, that is fine. I am open to hearing all sorts of agreements and disagreements. If you would like to agree with anything that I've said in this podcast or previous podcasts, because I'll tell you, as I'm getting ready to compile the best of 10-year anniversary of, and by the time it comes out, it'll probably be about the 11th year, or actually 12th year anniversary of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. I will tell you, I have made some massive incorrect predictions. I own all of those. I stand by every single one of my incorrect predictions because this is a fun podcast to discuss, to debate, and to share and argue, I guess you could say, ideas surrounding the show that we love, Doctor Who. And so I'm all for that. So if you would like to discuss and share your opinion on anything that has been stated in this podcast or any previous ones, please email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. That is ALHAMBRA audio@gmail.com. You can tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. So, wow. With that being said, I am going to not start off by reviewing the War Games colorization. I'm going to tease, and if you don't like the tease, there are chapter markers that you can, scrub to get to the part that you want. But I'm going to tease and do a comparison and contrast. We'll set up a comparison and contrast revolving around the colorization of the Daleks, which was done last year as day of recording in, what was it? The 23rd of November at some time o'clock. And I feel as though it's very important to discuss and compare and contrast the two different colorizations and also abbreviations of the series, because one, you have the War Games, which is 10 episodes. With the other one, you have the Daleks, which is 7. The Daleks was condensed to 75 minutes, and the War Games was condensed to 90 minutes. The colorization happened on both of them, and then, there had been some adjustments done to both of them. I have briefly discussed the colorization of the Daleks, and I'm not sure if I gave a full review. Maybe I did. Maybe it was even the number one topic of the discussion at the time. But here we are. This is dedicated to the colorization and also abbreviation of right now, the Daleks. Now, as I previously discussed, and I do know I did say this, I actually was waiting to really have it irk me that this classic story was colorized and shortened. Now, I feel as though for the longest time, they did a really good job of, overlaying almost what would be considered narration. As, the Thals were doing this, or Susan was doing that, or whatnot. And, they would cut William Russell's dialogue, and generally, because I swear it was usually him. Sometimes it was, the Doctor as portrayed by the first Doctor as portrayed by William Hartnell. And you had this being overlaid by, certain things that were going on, so that you could also have the discussion of the plan, but also seeing the plan come into fruition in real time. The only problem I had with that kind of thinking is I'm not used to that with classic Doctor Who. And so you'd almost kind of suspect that it is not really, it's not really happening in real time. It's basically this is what I think it's going to look like. This is what we're going to do. And then it's okay, break. And then they, run through it. And then of course there's a snafu or something like that. That's what I would initially thinking. But again, when you had to realize that it was 75 minutes, they weren't going to do it because they didn't have time to replay the whole thing. And of course, that's not how it actually played out in the classic series of Doctor Who and the Daleks. So I did like the use of Nick Briggs as the Dalek voice in the colorization, because as Liam has said in numerous podcasts, one of the things that he struggles with the Daleks master plan, also Power of the Daleks, was the pacing of the cadence of the Daleks' voices and how the ring modulation always seemed to change. Now, Nick Briggs has now perfected it through Big Finish and also working with the BBC, being most of the monsters' voices, or many of the monsters' voices throughout, the New Who era. So I had no problem with that. One of the things that I think was distracting for Doctor Who and the Daleks was the incidental music that was being played, because it sometimes did not match what I would expect it being, should be played. And but I had also no issue whatsoever. I just felt as though they could have used more era specific music, more orchestral music. Like, for example, if they were to do something like that to, that would be horrible. What does it be? Season 18 with the Key to Time series and abridge that sucker. I mean, it would have to, like, all the incidental music would have to be synthesizers. And I don't think I could get behind that. I don't think you could do a good job of abridging an entire series. And I'm just, the only reason why I bring that up is because that is the closest thing besides the Daleks Master Plan to the longest episode possible. And yeah, it went by a little bit too fast. I feel as though it could have used some time to breathe also, especially because that is what the classic era Doctor Who does, is it has time, it has room to breathe. Now, as I pull up some people who were reviewing the classic colorization of the Daleks, somebody asked, on Twitter, the Daleks has been colorized, recut to 75-minute features with new modern music for the 60th anniversary. Again, there's the word modern. I think it's fantastic that it's being done properly. What does everyone else think of this? And the first person chimes in and says it has not been done properly. They cut the length to 75 minutes, so they have removed stuff that shouldn't have been removed. I also never want to watch this Doctor Who in color. It's like colorizing a Hitchcock movie. And, a couple people, I don't have any issue with this, but some people, I think this is good because some people find black and white boring. I don't, but other people do. And I think that that's kind of interesting, revolving around that. Again, somebody put, cut, a couple question marks, new quote unquote modern music, a whole bunch more question marks. I like the old modern music. And the retort to that one is that version will always exist. I think it's an interesting experiment. And as an editor by trade, I'm fascinated. So I like that the person who posted this on Twitter was kind of very open to the possibility of, having a debate, being seen as wrong in their opinion, and also being able to look past, and understand certain things. Now, as I prepared for this, I also looked up what people thought of after the broadcast on the 23rd of November for the 60th anniversary, the condensed, sweet and condensed, I guess you could say, not milk though, story of the Daleks, the colorized sweet and condensed story. And somebody just said, wow, so that's half the story cut right. I'm curious to see the editing on this. So that was referring to this. And one person said, and I really like this, is there was a ton of padding in those old episodes. Most of the classic stories could have used an edit to be more digestible for a modern audience. Now, I don't like the word modern audience because sometimes the modern audience, that is, I guess that's a vernacular that I don't particularly care for. However, somebody comes in and tries to control this conversation, says, I love telling other fans. And again, it is okay for you to have opinion, but to be telling them this and to be doing it with glee, I think that is where the issue and the contention amongst fans comes down. It says, yes, I love telling other fans how the greatest classic story ever, Genesis of the Daleks, was a 6-part episode. Was 6-part episodes long, but easily could have been 4, even 3 in a pinch. They get angry at first, and then they remember the story and how it played out, and then the conversation ends. Now, I agree. I feel as though they could have, condensed Genesis of the Daleks. However, we need to go back into the serialization, the way that people consume media, and it is so super hard to say this is what they should have done. TV watching, TV show viewing is completely different from the 60s and 70s as compared to what it is today. It is even different compared to the United States and the UK, because again, you had over here airing almost, during the late 60s was the classic episodes of Star Trek. They were about 45-ish minutes long. Most of them, there was a handful of them that were two-parters, but at the very beginning of each one, there was a problem, there was a solution, and then it ended. And it was done in 40 to 45 minutes or so. That is not how British TV was working. Now you can say, and Liam probably would say also that, well, what about Dark Shadows? I have no idea. But serialization over here generally was done in movie reels. You'd get part one of a Flash Gordon in one movie reel, and then you'd have to wait for another movie to find out what part two was to get you to go back to the movies, even if it was a movie that you didn't want to see, so that you wouldn't be out of the loop. I mean, that's how the serialization worked over here mostly. Not always, but mostly. And so again, we're trying to comparing one nation's TV viewing to another one completely different at the time. Now we're judging it from a 21st century. Now we're a quarter into the 21st century. We're judging, what happened at the 60s era and their storytelling. Again, why didn't it change? Why did Doctor Who's storytelling really not change until about the Sylvester McCoy era, where it would go sometimes 4 episodes, sometimes 3 episodes? And also, I guess to retort this person is, why weren't those episodes condensed too? There's a lot of wasted time in the 7th Doctor era, in my opinion. Now, I know some people absolutely love the 7th Doctor. I struggle getting through it, but you know what? It's almost like the BBC Doctor Who was afraid of changing the way that they had always done things. And so they just continued to doing them and keeping things the same. It took until 2005 for them to make an adjustment. And so for us to say 2005 and beyond, you did it wrong, this is the correct way. Let me, come here, my son. Let me tell you all the ways that you're wrong. I feel as though that is doing fans of and the creators of that time an injustice. Yes, it was long. Yes, they could have simmered it down and gotten to the point quicker. But that's not how things were. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of people that were not super excited about this pre-release. Then, again, this is the colorization of the Daleks. We have, according to, this is an article on CBR.com. It was released the 26th of November, 2023. And they talked about, Doctor Who's best. Oh, sorry. That was a clickable link. New content added to the Daleks. So, and here is, and this is why I think it's so important to discuss this before we get into the war games, is because of the new content that was added to the Daleks. According to this article, it says, as well as re-editing the existing episodes into a single feature film, the colorization of the Daleks added new elements to the classic Doctor Who serial. The opening scenes featured new footage of the TARDIS materializing in Scarrow's forest, which originally occurred off-screen when the serial first aired. Other new footage included newly composed establishing shots of the Dalek city on Scarrow, again, which is very similar to what they did with the War Games, which are featured throughout the story as a way of marking the passage of time. Again, similarly to the War Games colorization, while also reasserting the city as the very heart of the story's central threat, With the Daleks confined to their city, the heroes repeatedly lured into it. The metal spires and the futuristic buildings represented the ultimate threat that Skaro faces. Alterations have also been made to the dialogue of the Daleks. In some cases, this only involves moving lines around or making minor tweaks. One scene sees the Daleks make reference to their Khalid forefathers. Originally, this had been Dalek forefathers, as the Daleks' ancestors would not be named Khalids until the 1975 story Genesis of the Daleks. Other scenes feature the Daleks exposing entirely new dialogues, provided by the modern series Dalek voice actor Nicholas Briggs. One sequence sees two Daleks plot to construct a fake message from Susan, explaining away the deleted scene in which Susan was forced to write this message herself. Okay? So then it says the Daleks were also seen screaming classic catchphrases such as "exterminate," "my vision is impaired, I cannot see," lines that would not be spoken until years after this initial appearance of the Daleks on Doctor Who. Their battle cry is also accompanied by shots of Dalek gunsticks firing laser beams, as seen in the modern series of Doctor Who. This serial has originally just used close-ups of Dalek guns, with the physical mechanisms extending from them to indicate whether they were firing. Other updates include visual POV shots utilizing blue tint and digital markings of the Dalek's lens to show display. This again brings the colorized version more in line with modern Who as they depict the Daleks that way. The final component that had been added to the Daleks is a new soundtrack composed by Mark Ayres. This new soundtrack incorporates and builds upon the serial's original score, injecting it with a new life and drama. The faster cutting, and that's where I really struggled with this one, with some of it, because I feel as though it was the faster pacing and the altered score kind of wasn't with what was actually being seen at times. I feel as though they wanted the scene to move away faster than it actually was. And that would be one of my criticisms of actually both the War Games and also the colorization of the Daleks. The faster cutting and the altered editing of the colorized version of the Daleks demands a score that can keep up with the pace of action in the new montages of what were once slower, lengthier scenes. The modern soundtrack serves as a driving force, carrying the audience through the narrative. And again, like I said, I did like that they use narration to kind of voice over certain things. I thought that went very well with that. On this article, yeah, I'm just going to stop right there. I like the POV shots. They did it with Power of the Daleks on the animation of that as well too. I'm not sure about Evil. I fell asleep through that one, but they've made some modifications throughout all of the colorizations and also the colorization / animations, which is fine because again, the certain scenes did not exist. If you watch and listen to some of the special features on the invasion, they had to, because they didn't know it was actually visually on screen, they had to create something that was either, seen for everybody because there was a sound being made and no one was quite sure, I believe in episode 1, I think that is, whether or not it was a flub by the cast or it was something that was supposed to be seen on the TARDIS screen. So I think it's quite interesting. It's kind of an interesting game that they've had to play previously, and it's okay as long as, and I think they had to kind of drag out. What I like to do, and what I have done previously, is I would listen to one of my favorite Dalek episodes, Dalek's Master Plan. I would line up the audio with the video from the narration done by Annika Wills. And I would listen, and I'd have it all, not Annika Wills, it was Peter Purvis, right? Anyway, I would watch the Dalek's Master Plan, line up the video with the voice narrated version that exists that I have through my Audible account, and I would just watch it. And after so long, the the video actually moves at a faster pace than the voice narration because they needed to extend more time for the actual narration to occur, so that that went so fast. So I would have to kind of slow certain things down. So I think it's quite interesting that they've had to, for the narration parts that no longer exist in video, that they've had to slow those episodes down so that they could also get the description, get what's going on, the action scenes perfectly described, and then allow the actual voice actors from the time that it was recorded in the 60s to play out the way that it was done. So there's always been some sort of, with what Doctor Who fans have been doing, some time change. However, with reducing it, they do change certain things, and they've had to alter, like it said, what was... anyway, that got away from me. There's an interesting article. I'm still going to be talking about, and again, if you don't want to hear it, please jump ahead to the chapter markers or whatnot. But this is a very interesting article I found. It's on junkyard.blog. And this is the Doctor Who, the Daleks in color. And it says, the Daleks is arguably the most important story in Doctor Who's long history. That doesn't mean it's the best, but it changed what might have been a one-season show to a 60-year phenomenon. The moment that the Dalek plunger appeared on screen, history changed. But why go back now? Because the great Russell T Davies decided that with this return to Doctor Who, he was going to modernize a classic and bring in a new audience. Will it work? And again, I think that's a really interesting premise, and I believe it's been discussed before, and it is an interesting way to think about it. This article, I'm going to skip ahead, says that, the 7 episodes were about 25 minutes each, and that's about 3 hours to watch in the entirety of it. In today's TikTok, YouTube, Instagram world, no one has that sort of attention span, sadly. And it says, certainly not for a 60s TV series, which was a different animal anyway. Kids have their attention span that is shorter than the life of a fly. Anyway. But Russell and his crew managed to take a 3-hour epic and do something amazing with it. They colorized it, edited it, shortened it to 75 minutes, and added exciting music and important sound effects. Was this good? No. They said it was amazing. And again, I feel as though, like I said early on, you can like both of those. You can actually have it as something that was brought up in the previous podcasts on the Doctor Who Alhambra podcast. Maybe this is your Splinter moment. Again, maybe the War Games is your Splinter moment, where this is where, the timelines fracture, and this leads to, new Who series. Whereas the classic one kind of maybe ends at 1989. Maybe it ends with the Big Finish audios and stuff like that. And with all of this re-editing and stuff like that, I do feel bad mostly for Big Finish, because they have done their darndest. And again, I'm not a paid spokesperson for Big Finish. They have done their darndest, though, to explain certain settings, situations, to breathe more life into the classic era, to fill in the holes, the discontinuity and whatnot. And then, of course, you have some other stuff that is just ridiculous and either A, a money grab, or B, just a fun thing to do. But I feel bad for Big Finish, because with the colorization of the Daleks, I feel as though that is kind of making things a tad bit more strenuous. And I feel as though, personally, the colorization of War Games, and also what is currently happening with the Timeless Child with the Russell T Davies and Chris Chibnall or whatnot, I really feel as though that is putting Big Finish in a really hard spot, between a hard spot and a hard spot, one would say. But I find it interesting, but again, I feel bad for them because they have done such a serviceable job. Would just be an inadequate. I can't think of a word, but serviceable would be not even where close to it. Just a phenomenal job. There we go. Thank you, brain. Of basically trying to fill in gaps in continuity and making the Doctor Who show that we love more adored by filling in discontinuity and making explanations and furthering the classic Doctor's lives. I'm not going to go into the whole Timeless Child. However, according to this, the Junkyard.blog said one of my biggest pet peeves. Let's see. One of my biggest pet peeves with Chris Chibnall era Doctor Who is that it created this idea that William Hartnell wasn't the first Doctor. Sure, you can write off a lot saying he was amnesiac, even though we saw him and Susan take the TARDIS to the 50th anniversary special, but it's a lot harder to say everyone in the universe is also amnesiac too. When the Doctor first says the word TARDIS next to the Daleks, they say it and they don't understand his words. You know why? Because this was their first meeting, and that is an interesting situation right there. I love that right there. This was their first meeting. Sorry, I just lost my place right there. The hundreds of doctors, including Joe Martin, he said hundreds, have never met the Daleks before, and we're supposed to believe that, considering how many omnipresents these pepper pots are. I don't buy it, but this little victory may mean nothing for anyone other than me. I just want to go on the record stating that in my mind, William Hartnell is still the first Doctor. All right, anyway, so I just had to read that because I thought that was fantastic. I'm going to follow this guy's blog. I'm really digging this. I think it's a very interesting and intriguing situation that the colorization of the Daleks did. I think kind of like what I saw on Reddit, there's so many people that want to goat other people into arguments. And you know what? Opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one, and some of them stink more than others. And I think that's perfectly fine. I am of the mind where it is okay to disagree and agree at the same time. As long as you can be like, okay, that's you and whatever. But again, fandom, fanatics, it's not going to happen. And so you either need to, if you don't like it, walk away from the fandom altogether. As I've heard some people claim to, especially on YouTube, I claim to walk away from this fandom. Okay, then why are you making videos about it? If you walk away from something, okay, so you hate it that much? Well, you hate it that much, but you do like the subscribers, you do like the view counts, you do like the income that comes in from your hate watch of the video. You know what? Props to you for being able to do that. Wish I could get that done on my YouTube channel, Comic Novice. If you want to subscribe and like to any of those, I'd appreciate that. I need to get back to doing a little bit more. Because I am trying to get over my embarrassment of being on camera, it is one of the hardest ones to do because I'm just sitting here by the safe confines of a microphone with no camera on. And I find that a little bit more or less nerve-wracking for myself personally. Anyway, that being said, let's get to the main purpose of this podcast. And that is I'm going to start off by reviewing Doctor Who, the War Games, the colorization version. And it's not going to be super long. I don't have massive amounts of notes for this. I do have some critiques and I do have some things that I do not agree with. And just like I just barely discussed in the colorization of the Daleks, they made some alterations to everything. One thing that they did do is they had the war zone as kind of like one of those, signifying that time has passed. Now, I like the animated war zone main headquarters, and I don't at the same exact time. The main reason why I like it is it's like, okay, we actually have a place where this is being taken place. And I like that. That was a lot of places right there. However, I don't like it also because I feel as though, and I think I had the similar, I don't recall, but I want to say I think I had the similar feeling towards the colorization of the Daleks is if you're going to do this, you need to either A, go all in and make it super, super new and fantastic and something that you would see in a 21st century, I almost said 21st century, 21st century production of Doctor Who. Just make it CGI the crap out of it. However, they didn't do that, which I'm kind of glad that they didn't because I think it would make everything go from kind of sometimes good colorization to sometimes fuzzy colorization. And it just wouldn't work unless, they put on some filter to make it look worse. But then at the same time, yeah, what they did again was good, but not good. What they should have done, and I know it probably would have cost money, probably more money than they would like to have spent. But what they should have done, if they wanted to have a scene that they could use to demonstrate time passage or scene changing setting to the main war zone office, I feel as though they should have had somebody make a miniature model and record it the same exact way that they would have done in 1969. I think that's what they should have done. I think that would have made it more authentic. It would have been less like pulling you out of the story because I feel as though whenever they would do it, they didn't do it often. I would probably say over a handful or two handfuls of times they did it. And the first time I saw it, I'm like, okay, I don't hate this, but I don't love it either. And then whenever they would do it, I started liking it a lot less. So similarly to what they did with Scarrow to demonstrate time has passed or setting change and stuff like that, and then having voiceovers so that they could, continue on with the dialogue, I found that one kind of just, it threw me from time to time. And I just didn't care for it, really. It wasn't the end of the world, or the war world for that matter, but I didn't care for it. I found the pacing of the 90 minutes for the colorization of the war game pretty good mostly. Or mostly is not a good word. Partially. I found the pacing for the colorization of the war games good up until around the 40-ish minute mark. I feel as though everything was clean, everything, made sense. And then around the 40-minute mark, kind of when you would watch it, the original 10 episode length version, when you would watch it and they were in the Civil War encampment, like that part was nearly cut out of the entirety of the colorization of the war games. The only reason why they had to keep it in is they needed the black soldier to be one of the resistor fighters that had been working with other people who broke their conditioning. If they had not needed that scene, I think they would have cut, the Civil War war zone out completely and just made the main, World War I war zone, the Roman war zone, and because those were the main two that they always did until they kind of got into the war zone central control area. And I feel as though that's where they wanted to spend a lot of their time. And then the cut scene between where Zoe was and the Doctor and Jamie were, I feel as though they were playing around with time. I feel as though, and I have not rewatched the 10 episode OG version of the War Games in a long time because first off, it's 10 episodes. And also, there's so much repeat. And you could say, well, duh, Brett, that's why they made this. And it's like, I get that. But also, when you cut certain things out and you have it as it is a 90-minute minimum, no, you cut it to a point where it makes sense. And I feel as though around the 40-minute mark, Zoe was doing things that she would have done later on, only to have it cut back and forth between Jamie and the Doctor from their, war zone, main, whatever facility. I found that it was very jarring at that point. They just wanted to cut to the very end. And that is what I really struggled with, was from around the 40-minute on, almost until the last 10, maybe 15 minutes of the colorization of the War Games. I found that so jarring constantly. Then you have, I did not notice, when I did my research, I noticed that they had, people were saying that they had played the John Sims Master, Murray Gold incidental music underneath when the War Chief was on. Was it the War Chief? The War Chief was on the screen. Never noticed that. I did notice I could hear Murray Gold, but I was too invested and also jarred by the switching back and forth from time to time. I did, however, notice the Roger Delgado master theme when they showed the War Chief in there. And that I did not care for, because it has been stated so many times, especially by Terrence Dicks, that I am aware of, that is not the Master. The Master and the War Chief are two distinct individuals. And when they killed the War Chief, I also did not like the fact that as he lie face down dead, that he... Is it the War Chief? The Time Lord. The Time Lord that's in the War Office. I think that's the War Chief. Anyway, I feel as though that when he laid on his chest, face down, dead, they played the sound effect of regeneration. And I was just like, oh, heck no. Heck no. I do not mind if RTD reincarnates the War Chief, but the War Chief is not the Master. The Master is not the War Chief. They are two distinct individuals. I will actually go out on a limb and say, with Terrence Dicks, yes, the faces on Brain of Morbius originally were supposed to be the Doctor's incarnations. Okay? Fan theory altered them to Morbius. If something makes sense, go with the fan theory. Don't go with, what was intended. However, Terrence Dicks said this is not the Master. The Master and the War Chief, two different individuals. It's not the same person. And now we're going with Chris Chibnall. We decided to burn the fan theory, which made more sense, and went with what was originally intended. With this, if you are saying that the War Chief is the Master, now we're going to burn what was originally intended and go with fan theory. And that is, no. I demand consistency. I am nothing but consistent. If I make mistakes, I will just say, I made that mistake. Sorry, my bad. Didn't mean to. But yeah, did not like that at all. I also struggled with the regeneration scene. It's been said that... Liam said that, Derek Sherwin said that there was no regeneration scene recorded and whatnot. And I almost want to believe that is like the regeneration scene. They used, Sean Pertwee as a stand-in, and they did, they used what they had of the original, heads swirling around Patrick Troughton's face and then morphing it into a couple of John Pertwee's, his younger self, possibly using Sean Pertwee. I don't believe for a second that regeneration right there led into that one. I believe it was ambiguous. They weren't 100% sure. And then we get the Auton story, the first colorization one, where he just falls out of the TARDIS. I don't believe that was most of that was authentic, original, uncut scene, never before seen footage. Unlike according to what it said with the colorization of the Daleks in the article that I read, I don't believe that. I believe some of it was some uncut stuff, but I think that was more Patrick Troughton and not John Pertwee. I found that kind of jarring to some extent. So, unless there's a documentary that is on this Blu-ray, I probably won't buy it. I did, and I will do a review. I did watch the Celestial Doctor Who and the Celestial Toymaker. I watched the animation. I watched the document. Did I? I did not watch the documentary of the making of. No, wait, maybe I did. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But I do own the colorization of the Daleks. I would give the colorization of the Daleks, I believe, a 6.5. The colorization of the War Games, I would give a 3 too. And the 3 basically comes from the first, or maybe I don't want to be cute. I used to be cute with my reviews and stuff like that and say, I'm going to give it 3 for the first 30 minutes or something like that. But that's what I almost want to do because it was I'm going to give it a 4. There we go. 4. 4 out of 10. I heard somebody give their review for something and I like it. I have to give it a 1 because it exists. Which totally goes kind of against the the Fourth Doctor Cyberman story, Return to Telos, the Return to Telos effect. But in my and Legion's defense, it does exist, but it also doesn't at the same exact time. So I have to give it at least a 1 because it exists. I have to give it a 2 because it, there is sound and there's pictures. 3 because I didn't completely hate it. And then 4 because, I don't know. I can't remember what the person that I heard that say, but I thought it was hysterical. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 and just say that the Black and White War Games episode, probably a 6.5 if, you look cross-eyed and kind of fast forward through some of the, repeats of each episode starting off. But I think that's my War Games. And I don't think that this one is my War Games. With that being said, I'm going to go to now the fans' critique of this because guess what? People have opinions on this War Games situation. And it's quite interesting, too, because there's something that popped up in a couple of the groups regarding somebody who gave their opinion. And it's one of those, I'm not sure I believe it. I don't believe it. I hope not that it's just a staged situation, but we'll see. Anyway, it says, Philip Morris, one of the archivists that was able to find the Web of Fear and also Enemy of the World, he has very strong opinions about the modern Who, and you know what? I am fine with that. You can have, draw your line in the sand. You can have those opinions. It says, tonight's War Games was a total travesty. Rewritten history to fit into new Who. Fan fiction at its worst. Total disregard for the past. Not content with killing the modern show. Pissing all over past creatives they will never match. And somebody basically, there was a screen capture, and it's so interesting because part of it doesn't exist. And now, there was a situation where there was 2 people going back and forth, or one person going back with Philip Morris, and they basically said, "Your original War Game DVD is not going anywhere, mate. Unlike the Web of Fear, episode 3. And he says, people that created the war games must be spinning in their graves, more desecration. Now, here's an interesting thing about that whole back and forth is there is, and I do have the screen capture, it says, I think they'd be more annoyed at the fact that there's still lots of missing episodes from that time at which you cannot find anymore. And he, according to this, he replied and also deleted this, says, you think and you know nothing. Let's be clear. I have material that I would never return to the BBC. It will never see the light of day again. I get great satisfaction knowing that these things will never be desecrated. Now, that's an interesting back and forth. Some people claim that part of the back and forth could be fake. And partially, I want to agree with that because, you wonder if that is true. And supposedly, it was deleted or whatnot. But I'm going to just take Philip Morris's word that he loves the show. And even though he's ticked at certain situations, that he would not be withholding. And if he is withholding stuff, I bet you it's just probably some of those Australia clips that, got taken out for... preventing people from being distraught, seeing the Doctor get drowned or something like that. And yeah, and I've seen some people say, no, it's totally, definitely not. But the weird thing about it is their supposed screenshot of what Philip Morris says does not match the font that they use, does not match a whole bunch of other things, and also does not match what Philip Morris's tagline is also. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure I believe that Philip Morris is hijacking lost material, but it is a fun conspiracy theory to kind of go down if one would like to go down it. Anyway, that was one review. I'm going to go to, where is this? Doctor Who. All right, Doctor Who. Doctor Who, the War Games in color. It says the 1960s black and white Doctor Who rode off into the sunset with 10-episode epic The War Games. Now it rises again in the 2020s with a bold, full-color feature, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, adding to the challenge that The War Game is a story surprisingly complex. The Doctor, Patrick Troughton, and his companions, Jamie and Zoe, land in the trenches of World War I. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Gonna skip ahead. 1969 original was among Doctor Who's most padded classic. Yes, we know that. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead again. Some very clever editing and cross-cutting streamlines the original's repeated exposition for genuinely more coherent narrative. Disagree. It's strongly... just go to the 40-minute mark. Around 45 minute or so minute mark. And I personally feel it is all over the place. The colorization once again casts a magical spell, filling the screen with more to see in even the oldest fans' eyes. Okay, sure. They talked about the modern special effects enhance the story and the regeneration that it was deserved. It says this new regeneration is a jewel in the color crown, seamless, magical, and even more mischievous. No. All right, I'm going to... then it says Mark Ayer's soundtrack mostly expands on Dudley Simpson's original, but with some splendidly fun anachronisms. Again, could not... it was nonstop. Like, even in New Who, the soundtrack, the incidental music does get dialed back from time to time. It it was a all systems go type of a situation for the soundtrack. And again, I found it so, oh man, that's what they should do. They should look at shortening Colony and Spaceman. That would be, maybe it'd be good. I disagree. I do not think that the War Games, this edit works mostly. Had they just not had the rigid 90 minutes, if they would have just allowed it to be whatever, 110 minutes, that is still nothing compared to the length that the actual War Games is. I also did not like the whole, I did also not like the whole, what was it? My brain just went dead. Oh yeah. The whole using all of the previous incarnations. That one's too old, Peter Capaldi. That one's too young. Oh, that one won't do it all. Like, that means that he has no control over his regenerations. They're predetermined to look like that. I disagree. I'm not sure if that's canon or whatnot, but I disagree. I strongly disagree. The Metro.co.uk, their article that came out the 24th of December says, Doctor Who fans convinced new version of the 60s episodes confirms huge plot twist. And of course, this basically goes to the Roger Delgado was officially introduced in 1971 as the Master and has gone and recently been portrayed by Sacha Dhawan. Says, but the similarities between the War Chief and the Master, from devilish schemes targeting the Doctor and his rugged, slightly mad appearance, fans have long thought that they were one and the same. Although various Doctor Who materials from the BBC books to spin-off audios have alluded that that might be the case, there has never been any official confirmation until now. No. I am sorry. No. Colorized special synopsis reads, when the TARDIS lands and the horrors of World War I, the Doctor uncovers a threat spanning galaxies and history itself, but this time saving the day might doom the Doctor forever. And nearly every time the War Chief, played by Edward Brayshaw, appears on the screen, Doctor Who composer Murray Gold's Season 3 theme, The Master Vanglorious, started playing in the background. The theme song used during John Sims' run as the iconic villain in New Who, and many can't contain their shock and excitement at the Easter egg. No, I can contain it, because no, it is not. Some people, according to the Metro, says the way I immediately sat up when the music kicked on, basically like the dude with the glasses, his mouth dropped open. The second Doctor and Brayshaw Master waiting has paid off in life. Okay. And someone said, oh, they're absolutely retconning the War Chief as the Master. And yeah, I do not agree with that. Comicbook.com has the title, Doctor Who just added David Tennant and more modern stars to the classic episode. Just like I said, I do not like the idea that they're predisposed to be these incarnations. I think that is a stupid idea. RadioTimes.com says Doctor Who fans think the War Games re-edit just confirmed an old fan theory. Fan theory, yeah. As you scroll down, it even says that even Terrence Dicks said that these are not one and the same, but again, they used this. So far, nobody on the timescales has reviewed this. I do strongly recommend somebody do it because I do like the timescales reviews. Even if you find or are questioning the person who runs the timescales, it is a good website, and I believe websites and review sites need to be used to convey legitimate opinions on media, because I do not like the people, I don't trust the people that are, have their back scratched by the BBC or by Disney Plus. So if, fans can go to a site, their blog, or to the timescales, which provides the space to do it, review it. In a Doctor Who group, this is what one person says: just watch Doctor Who, the War Games in color, and I have some thoughts about it. The pros: the color looks wonderful. If I didn't know any better, I'd say the original episodes were in fact shot in color. The new effects and the exterior shots were neat. Neat's an interesting word. I love the addition of the exterior shots of the alien base. In particular, I also love how the ambulance goes through the time. That was cool, how the ambulance goes through the time barrier and disappears into the hidden mist rather than just fading out. The final scene on Gallifrey, the regeneration scene, were wonderful. Additional clips of the Dalek, Cybermen, and others during the trial were welcome too. This is still the War Games. One 90-minute edit or 10 25-minute episodes, it's still one of Patrick Troughton's finest performances. The cons from this person says: the music, a tad bit overbearing at times, sometimes it drowning out the dialogue. I never found it drowning out the dialogue. I just feel as though it was just nonstop. The implications that the war chief is in fact the master via the musical cues is a bit of a stretch. Terrence Dick's statement on the subject aside, I never thought the war chief and the master as one and the same. The usage of the sound of drum soundtrack is a bit much on the nose. They even use the 70s Season 9 master theme, which at very least is more subtle. I agree with this. The edit, taking 10 25-minute episodes and cutting into 90 minutes, is pretty tall. Even if the majority of the runtime of the original is filler, I think me and this guy agree. 120-minute edit may have been better, but credit where credit is due. The editing there was way better than it was for the Dalek. I disagree. Disagree. As I look at this, somebody said that, your review is unfair and or your review is fair and without bitterness and outrage, which again, that would be the best thing that you could say about any of these things, any of these people's thoughts on all of this, is you can disagree, but to be fair and really unbiased, I think is what really needs to happen. And another, the old school Doctor Who fan group has a picture of the war chief, and it has the article linking to the Radio Times about the re-edit confirms an old theory. And we have here, no, a million times no, Terrence Dicks created both characters and definitely said they are not the same character. I should know, I created them. Anything other than that is fan fiction and as a result invalid. Interesting. What do people say about that? It says no, it's not and can be changed. All right. So then we can also, because the Chibnall era is not good, we change and just take out the 13th Doctor as played by Jodie Whittaker out also. Who is for that? Because I will tell you, that would be divisive in nature. And regardless of whether you like the 13th Doctor or not, she's the 13th Doctor, and that's all there is to it. The storylines can suck, but you know what? You can at least take future episodes and you can mold them to craft a better story/narrative. Now, if this is the case, then we need to re-edit the Fugitive of the Jadoon, and we need to re-edit that so that the Joe Martin Doctor is actually the master. Let's do that. I mean, that makes more sense. So let's do it. If this person says that no, and it can be changed, then that can be changed too. Let's stop changing stuff that is in existence. Let's stop changing fan theories and or actual legitimate script editors and writers' theories. Why don't we just focus on the here and now? I cannot wait. You know, because there's some people that really do not like the The Talons of Wing Chiang, you know that there's going to be some writer that is going to write that from not being canon and continuity because, insensitive time writing. Yeah, just know that that's probably going to happen, and it is okay. No, it is not okay. It is definitely not okay. And then, of course, we have what our RTD has done recently, which is basically allowing the toy maker to, this is all his doing. You could also say, okay, well, then the canon and continuity for the war games is his continuity too, which, again, I could be made sense of if, we're going to buy Regenerate, then we need to have the continuing adventures of the second Doctor as well as the Joe Martin Doctor and or the third Doctor, as currently being done by Big Finish in the season 6B. Now, if we re-edit this and we change certain things and have Joe Martin Doctor in between the second and third, now we take away season 6B, which was a fun fan theory. Again, if the fan theory is fun, let it ride. Stop imprinting your own garbage and your own crap on the show. From the show's past, I should say. Start imprinting your new stuff, but don't diss and change and alter classic stuff. Hands off the classic stuff. Let's just pretend that we're at the Great British Bake Off and, Noel Fielding is, counting down. 3, 2, 1. Bakers, step away from the bank. Your bakes. Okay, 3, 2, 1. K, RTD, future showrunner. Step away from the classic era. Hands in the air. That's what needs to happen. Yeah, and then somebody says, I was hoping for a double regeneration. Anyway, yeah. Let's see. Let me just pull this one up. It says, old fan theory. I'm an old fan, and of those that had all the Target books before they came out on VHS, type old. And I've never heard of this theory ever. Interesting. So yeah, I just wanted to give my thoughts and reviews on the war games, the colorization of it, the new edit, and just say, like I said at the very beginning, they can both exist. The colorization version could be the splintered that leads us to the new series. You can also take the classic one and just be like, okay, and TV movie is where it is capped off. Or a 1989 season 7 or series 26 is where it ends, and Target novelizations, the Virgin novelizations, all those other things, the missing adventures, that is what lives in there. And you could say, you could take Big Finish and say that one exists, that one doesn't, because it crosses over to this barrier. Have fun with Doctor Who. Make it fun. Enjoy it. That is all that you need. I like it. I cannot wait to pick up the new season of the Blu-ray for the Fifth Doctor. I'm gonna wait that sucker out to be on sale, but I am very excited for that. I'm also super excited for one of my favorite Doctors, the Third Doctor's newest Blu-ray release to come out as well too. So what are your thoughts of this podcast, any other podcast? What are your thoughts revolving around the abridgedness, the colorization, the abridgination, the alteration of these two classic stories? Again, this is mainly a war games color, but I wanted to compare and contrast that with the colorization of the Daleks. What are your thoughts about these? I'd love to hear them. Please email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. Like, subscribe where you find, if you're watching or listening to this on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, and drop in a message. I do get those that are sent to me usually. I sometimes have to check. But again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And until next time, I will see you in time.
You have been listening to the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Doctor Who is owned and trademarked by the BBC. Doctor Who Alhambra is not affiliated with the BBC or Big Finish. No infringement is intended. Visit our website at alhambrapodcast.weebly.com or email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet us at Alhambra Podcast. That is ALHAMBRA Podcast. Thank you.